It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
All right, well, one of the things we like to do on Mondays is take a look at the feast days that we could be celebrating this week. Always a lot of different saints that we could be celebrating.
Yes,
but some of the highlights, maybe some that you haven't heard of before that we could draw your attention to. And so, Andrea, who do we have this week?
Well, today is a big day in Vercelli, Italy. I always think like it's cool if there's like a celebrity from your town or like a professional athlete.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. I always like follow what they're doing and kind of get excited about it.
Uh-huh.
It would be even cooler to have a saint from your town. I'm just saying that would be definitely way above having a celebrity or a professional athlete. And Vercelli, Italy has a lot more than I was expecting. Especially considering that today they have two in one day. They have William of Vercelli. He was an orphan who became a hermit and founded religious communities all over Italy. And then Saint Maximus of Turin. He was born in Vercelli, but then he became the Bishop of Turin. So that's why he's Maximus of Turin. He was a famous biblical scholar and preacher. So anyway, I hope they're having some proper parties in Vercelli today.
I bet, yeah.
Tomorrow, Tuesday, June 26th, is a feast of Saint Jose Maria Escriva, or Escriva. I'm not actually sure the proper pronunciation. I've heard it both ways. But anyway, he was the founder of Opus Dei, which means work of God. We have a lot of Opus Dei people in our diocese, and actually all over the world. There are tons of them. Saint Jose Maria wanted to help ordinary people seek holiness through their everyday activities, so he founded the movement focused on living with a Christian spirit in daily duties, just in our everyday work. Jose Maria was canonized in 2002, just 27 years after he died. That's one of the shortest waiting periods in church history. And today, Opus Dei members include about 83,000 lay people and almost 2,000 priests in 60 countries.
Nice.
Yeah. So definitely made his mark. And he is not quite contemporary, but pretty close. Not too long ago. Wednesday, June 27th, Saint Cyril of Alexandria, a doctor of the church. I don't think we had a trivia question about him last week when we talked about doctors of the church, but still exciting. He championed the cause of orthodoxy against the heresy of Nestorius, who taught that Christ was two persons, one human and one divine. For those of us who aren't theology experts or philosophy majors, the correct teaching is that Christ is one person with two natures. So Nestorius said two natures or two persons.
2 persons.
But really, there's only one person, two natures. So one person, truly human and truly divine at the same time. There are all kinds of reasons why it matters that there would be one person. And in fact, Thursday's saint, Saint Irenaeus, talked a lot about why it mattered that there would be one person, not two separate people or persons. So anyway, Saint Cyril, he taught against Nestorius. We're celebrating him on Wednesday. So then on Thursday, Saint Irenaeus, June 28th, not a doctor of the church, but he was like Saint Cyril. He was one of the early church fathers and wrote a lot of letters against heretics. Like I said, he talked a little bit about, I studied these in one of my classes in college. And I just thought it was so interesting to study the church fathers because I had no idea that they ever had to deal with all of this confusion. But as we know, the Bible takes some interpretation, you know,
Right.
And thank goodness we had some smart people to do it for us.
And that's the reason why we don't have some of the confusion today that we did back then, is because they wrote so eloquently on it.
Yeah. So one of the reasons St. Irenaeus explained that it was important that Christ be just one person and not two persons was that it caused some confusion about the role of Mary, because Nestorius was teaching that Mary was not the mother of God. She was just the mother of the human part of Jesus.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's part of the confusion. So actually, Irenaeus ended up being one of the first church fathers to write extensively about Mary, and he was the first to make the connection between Mary and Eve that we're so used to now. We call Mary the new Eve. He was the first one to write that. He wrote, even though Eve had Adam for a husband, she was still a virgin, and by disobeying, Eve became the cause of death for herself and the whole human race. In the same way, Mary, though she had a husband, was still a virgin, and by obeying, she became the cause of salvation for herself and for the whole human race.
Right.
So cool. I loved reading about St. Irenaeus' teachings on Mary when I was in college. So he's one of my favorites. Friday, June 29th, feast solemnity of Saints Peter and Paul. That means if you don't eat meat on Fridays, you can this Friday.
There you go.
So exciting. It's a Meat Friday. If you don't know about Saints Peter and Paul, I suggest that you try going to Mass because you will learn about them there. They are very often featured in the readings. But Saint Peter was one of the 12 apostles, of course, chosen by Jesus to be the first among them, the rock on whom the church would be built. So Saint Peter was the first pope. But one of my favorite things about Saint Peter is that not all the stories about him are exactly flattering. He denied Jesus at the end of Jesus' life. He was sometimes a little slow to get the point. See John chapter 21, where Jesus has to ask him 3 whole times about, do you love me? And then responds the same way, feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my sheep. Maybe not quite getting it. Another example, St. Peter didn't trust Jesus when he was walking on the water, so he almost drowned. Not always 100% on the right page, St. Peter, but he persevered and did it in the end. Very relatable. I think we can all understand that. St. Paul, of course, had a rough start. He was one of the most vocal opponents of the early Christians, leading to persecutions against them. But then Jesus literally knocked him off of a horse, blinded him, and said, "Why do you persecute me?" So then St. Paul was baptized, and his sight came back, and he spent the rest of his life evangelizing. He wrote most of the New Testament and is the patron saint of missionaries and theologians, and also Gentiles, which is most of us, unless you have some kind of specific Jewish heritage.
Sure.
Saturday, June 30th, first martyrs of the Church of Rome. And then also Blessed Raymond Lull, who is not an official doctor of the church, but he was known as the enlightened doctor. He dedicated most of his life to helping convert Muslims, and he founded colleges where people could learn Arabic alongside theology so that they'd be more capable of speaking to Muslim people. Finally, Sunday is the Feast of the Precious Blood. And St. Junipero Serra, an American saint who was just recently canonized just a couple years ago. And also St. Oliver Plunkett, who was an Irish saint during a time of pretty severe persecution.